So students, now we'll see one more sum of law of reciprocal proportion. I guess you have already seen one sum of law of reciprocal proportion. This is the other one, okay? Now let us see how to solve this sum. A compound contains carbon and chlorine. So I wrote here carbon and chlorine. And the percentage of chlorine is given 92.21%. So in the compound of carbon and chlorine, the percentage of chlorine is given 92.21%. So how to find for chlorine then? So how to find for carbon then? By subtracting this from 100. If you do so, it will come 7.79. After subtracting this from 100, you get 7.79. In the other compound of carbon and sulfur, percentage of sulfur is given 84.21. Percentage of sulfur is given 84.21. So if you got the percentage of sulfur, how to find for carbon? By subtracting this from 100, we will get 15.79. In the third compound of sulfur and chlorine, percentage of chlorine is given 52.59. So you got the percentage of chlorine. How to find percentage of sulfur? By subtracting this from 100, it will come 47.21% if you subtract this from 100. So these are the data given by the question. We got one percentage was given, we found the other percentage by subtracting from 100. Now you have to prove that this is the sum of law of reciprocal proportion. Again, if you see, there are three different elements: carbon, chlorine and sulfur, and forming three different compounds. So we have to take any two compounds. I will take the first two only. Again, in these first two compounds, if you see which element is same, carbon. So we will try to keep carbon fixed by making it 1 gram. When I do so, I will get the percentage of sulfur and chlorine. So whatever percentage of sulfur and chlorine we will get from these two compounds, sulfur chlorine percentage ratio, that will compare with the third sulfur chlorine. Okay, and if the ratio coming out from here of sulfur and chlorine and from your sulfur and chlorine comes equal or multiple, the law is proved. So let us proceed further. So mass of ratio of chlorine is to carbon is to chlorine. Carbon is this much, chlorine is this much. And in these two is common, carbon, so we try to keep it fixed by making it 1 gram. So you have to bring this down. So 1 is 1. So when you divide these two, it will come 11.8. Similarly, here we find the ratio of carbon is to sulfur. And carbon is this much, sulfur is given 84.21. Since you have kept carbon fixed, here also you kept carbon fixed by bringing this number down. So when you divide these two, it will come 5.33. So if you see, in both the cases, I have kept carbon fixed by making it 1 gram. So keeping carbon fixed, now we will compare the ratio of sulfur is to chlorine. So if we keep the mass of carbon fixed, that is 1 gram, you can see from here. Then the mass ratio of what we are going to find, sulfur is to chlorine in the two compound. Why I am not saying chlorine is to sulfur? Why I am saying sulfur is to chlorine? Because here also sulfur is to chlorine. So when you keep the mass of carbon fixed, now we are going to compare the mass ratio of sulfur is to chlorine in this two compound. So sulfur is how much? 5.33 and chlorine is how much? 11.88. In these two, which is lesser? 5.33. So make it 1 by taking this number down. So as you take this number down, it will become like this. So this will be 1:2. If you divide these two, it will come 2:2. If you divide these two, it will come 2:2. That will be equation 1. Ratio 1 of sulfur and chlorine. Now in the third compound, we will find the ratio of sulfur chlorine again. These two we got earlier. So let us find the mass ratio of sulfur is to chlorine. Okay, sulfur is to what? Chlorine. We are going to find the mass ratio of sulfur is to chlorine. Sulfur is 47.21. Chlorine is given here 52.59. Now again, these two, who is less? Sulfur value is less. So bring this down. So as you bring it this, so how much will be sulfur? 1. When you divide these two, it will come 1.1. So this is the second ratio we got. So what is the first ratio of sulfur and chlorine we got? The first ratio of sulfur and chlorine we got was this one. 1:2.2. In the second ratio we got in the third compound is 1:1.1. Now if you compare, if these two will come equal, the law of reciprocal proportion is proved. But if it comes multiple also, the law of proportion is proved. Now if you see 1 is no issue, isn't it? If you multiply 1.1 by 2, you will get 2.22. So which is higher? This is higher. So ratio 1 is multiple of ratio 2. The one which is higher is called multiple. So ratio 1 is the multiple of ratio 2. So since the ratio 1 is multiple of ratio 2, Ratio 1 is the multiple of ratio 2. Ratio 1, 2.2 is more than 1.1. So ratio 1 is the multiple of ratio 2. Therefore, the law of reciprocal proportion is proved. So also understood this is how we prove the law. Okay. So whatever two sums I have done so far, we got the multiple. In earlier case 2 was the multiple of 1, in this case 1 is the multiple of 2. But do remember, in some numerical problem of law of reciprocal proportion, the ratio may come same. If the ratio comes same, that is also the law of reciprocal proportion. So thank you very much. This much for today.